Okay. President Rob, thank you for your willingness to share with the members and guests here today some of your personal story of the journey that brought you here today as the President of the Rotary Club of Adelaide. I know that you are not a local but started life in another city. Can you share with us your early days of family life and education?
Thanks, Rob, for the invitation to share. It was my birthday the other day, so I'm 68, so it's 68 years worth of coverage. But I was born in Sydney, North Sydney to be precise, in the Mater Hospital. I was born to deaf parents. My parents, my mother, her mother, which is my grandmother, had rubella, so she was born deaf. My father, he contracted meningitis when he was 2 years of age, so he was deaf. My parents met at school, at boarding school in Sydney in those days, even though they only lived a few miles away, miles in those days, they went to a boarding school. Imagine going to boarding school at 5 years of age, but that's what life was all about. So they got married, I came along, and I was very fortunate that my parents actually lived in a house in Willoughby, East Willoughby to be precise, which is 5 miles north of the GPO. That's how we used to describe it, 5 miles north of in those days. And we were very fortunate in that we lived in an area where we had playing fields. St Aloysius College had their playing fields directly opposite our house. We had tennis courts, 6 tennis courts behind our house. We had a local park, Willoughby Park, which David Egan knows because his daughter lived around the road. Fantastic area to have been brought up in. You've got to go there and see it. That was wonderful. So I went to school at Willoughby Primary School, a mile away in the old days. We used to walk to school. And just on from that was, we all know Channel 9 Studios. Channel 9 Studios is just up the road. So I had a bit of an experience with being on TV at an early stage. Cabbage quiz. I met little Patty once at Channel 9 Studios. We used to be on the Ampol Car Club. So I had a bit of an exposure to the media back then. So Willoughby Primary School was great. I don't know how, but I ended up being a prefect. I mean, prefects not everybody was a prefect. It was only about 4 or 5 of us, and so I was fortunate enough to be given the role of a prefect. In those days, that was pretty special. Then I went on to high school. In our area, you had North Sydney Boys High School, which was a selective school. Crow's Nest Boys High School was where everybody else went. Fortunately, I was able to get to North Sydney Boys High School. I haven't finished yet, Rob. And I did 5-6 years there. We were the first year of the Wyndham scheme back in those days. I had a reasonably good time at high school. I played in the rugby, first 15 for 3 years from the age of 15. I was on the cricket side, I was at school cadets. Actually, one of the things I did learn at a very early age, bear in mind I never heard my parents speak, obviously, and they didn't hear, they never actually told me how to pronounce my surname, which everybody in South Australia would say is Falconer. But the reality is, and this was learnt when I was at first year at high school, and by the way, our school was on Falcon Street, North Sydney. The school was old Falconians. We were all old Falconians. First year at school, a 5th year student, I was only 12, and this kid would have been 17 at the time. He walked up to me and said, "How do you pronounce your surname?" And I said, "Falconer." He said, "Right." Everybody in the Scottish table would agree with that? Yeah, Falconer. Falconer is the correct pronunciation. So from here on in, if you could refer to it as Falconer, I'd appreciate it. Thanks, Rob.
That was long-winded to get to that point, Rob. After finishing high school, you began a career and undertook further study. What was your career that you pursued? And I understand you were recognised at a reasonably early stage of your career for leadership roles. And where did this career take you?
So in 1968, I left school, and what do you do in those days? I didn't want to go to university, funnily enough. I just didn't want to go. And I had no encouragement from my parents. So I applied for jobs, and I was fortunate enough to win a role with a statutory federal government body called, in those days, Export Payments Insurance Corporation. It became known as Export Finance Insurance Corporation. So we were involved in export credit insurance in those days, and now it's very much into export lending, long-term finance contracts. So I was there in Sydney. I did a 2-year diploma course at Australian Institute of Export, ran a course at the University of New South Wales. So I trotted out there twice, two nights a week after work, and all by bus in those days. So I did that course, passed that, and then subsequent to that, oh, by the way, during that time, national service was around. I mean, for those who are around my age, we all had to go into a lottery. You could have avoided that lottery by going to the CMF, Citizen Military Forces. I was going to say something else then. But, so I was in the local CMF, 7th Field Regiment, so I was in the artillery for about 6 years. So in 1975, I was then promoted to Melbourne. I went to Melbourne. I was there for 3 years, got exposed to Australian rules football and barracked for Hawthorn in those days. Then in 78, I was then promoted. I came to South Australia. I was promoted to the state manager role of EPIC in those days, at the age of 28. So I stayed there for a number of years. If I was going to go anywhere, I was going to go back to Sydney. I really didn't want to go back to Sydney. The family was settled here. We'd done 3 years in Melbourne. We came here. So I went into a friend was in a share broking firm, Thompson Brindle at the time. So I joined Thompson Brindle. Then, in '88, just after the share market crash, I then joined the NAB. The National Australia Bank was creating a financial planning role at that point, and you now know all our banks probably regretting that. They're all moving out now as a consequence of what's been happening. So from that time on, 1988 to right now, I've been in the financial planning world.
You mentioned you were in Adelaide because of your family staying here. Can you give a picture of your family? Now, I understand your commemorative stone that would mark your marriage to Karen would be an emerald. How did you meet Karen, and tell us about your family and other interests?
Well, Karen lived locally as well in Willoughby. She just lived on the other side of that park I was referring to. She went to Willoughby Primary. I didn't meet her then, but went to Willoughby High School. She was Dux of the primary school. She was probably Dux and school captain of the high school. So she had some brains. I don't know why she came along to me. But anyway, bottom line is I was a friend of her brother's. We used to go surfing together and all the rest of it. So through that, we became good friends. So we got married, 3 adult children, 2 boys and a girl, and we had 3 young grandchildren, or 3 grandchildren. One of them's in Perth, actually. So Nathan, the oldest son, he's in Perth, but he travels a lot. Most people here would put Booth Transport, the wine carrier, which is now, that's only 20% of the business, 80% is now milk. Well, Nathan basically is the only non-family member. He essentially runs that show now, today. So he's the hire and fire. So, so interests, golf, back with golf, bit of travel.
Okay, you're Rotarian. It's not unusual for Rotarians to have some involvement in a community service environment well before joining a Rotary Club. Can you share with us some of your community service interests?
In the early 70s, straight after leaving school, I went and joined Rotaract. I mean, it was my friends and I, we all got involved in Rotaract Club of Chatswood, which is in the North Shore of Sydney. I became president of that club. I attended RILA. So I was there for a while. My wife and I got married. We then went to Melbourne. We hadn't had a family at that stage, but we then joined the local Apex Club. So Apex being for males up to 40 years of age. So we joined there, the local club. That served us well. We had 2 kids at that stage. We came back to Adelaide, came to Adelaide. And in 1978, I joined the Flagstaff Hill Club. And I became president of that club some time later. And I became zone chairman for community service. And one of the great things of that year for me was that Reg Grundy came to us, to Apex. Our national president at the time was living in Adelaide, Terry Anderson, and they wanted a team of people to actually man this quiz show. Is that all I got left? 3 minutes? You're kidding. No, we don't. Anyway, so we created this, I organised the knockout teams for this national TV show, which was fantastic. Our team is called the Southern Wine Coasters. So here in...
After establishing yourself in Adelaide and focusing on your growing family, you joined the Rotary Club of Adelaide in 2001. Who was your proposer and what have been the highlights for serving our club so far?
The proposer is not here today, Phil Kleinig. We knew each other from beforehand, but out the back in the Village Green area that we had the showdown dinners, lunches, and this club hosted those lunches back then. It was a really great show and Ray Clark was the president at the time. Anyway, so from that meeting, or that lunch, I then joined Rotary. I've been on the board, I've been for 7 years on the board. As I mentioned the other day, Warren Wilson I was VP to him. Peter White after that. I was Director of Fundraising with Jeff Wagner and Tony Robbins. In all that time, we were very much involved in the old Trailblazer with Operation Flinders. We had the magic show running. We also, a special event was the Bulls and Bears Ball. 3 years we ran that in conjunction with the Financial Planning Association. Tony Brosnan would have been there, Richard Dahl, a few others. It was a really great show, but the FPA went other ways, so we stopped that. I was VP to Darcy last year, the year before, and last year.
All right. President Rob, what do you see as some of the things you'd like to see achieved over the next 12 months as President?
It's all about having fun. That's what I said the other day at the changeover. Let's try and have fun in this place because at the end of the day, fun. We've got a comedy night in August. That's fun. We've got things coming up all over the place over the next 12 months which involve fun. So let's try and get behind that and that's basically fun is what I'm looking for. As Colin Bryson said, if we get the fellowship right, everything else will fall into place. And we're looking for increased sustainable membership as a consequence. The Speakers program is very important. In the interest of time, I'm sort of shortcutting this, but obviously administration, online booking system, we want to get up and going. We want to use better use of the website, improve marketing. Board meetings have always been an issue. We normally have 7. I've cut that back to 7. What we wanted to encourage is the chairs of the various committees to get out and have meetings with their people, rather than coming along to a board meeting and wasting their time, have a meeting with your people, members of the various committees. So hopefully members of the club will be willing to go along and meet with the directors who hopefully will call meetings over the next 12 months. There's ongoing work in international youth services, fundraising, etc. In the area of community service, obviously we'll keep going with Chapman House and Hutt Street. But 12 months ago, you probably recall talking to you, Rob, at his changeover, when he came in, sat next to Genevieve, our Lady Mayoress, and asked her whether there was anything worthwhile supporting in Adelaide. So Genevieve went away and thought about it and came back and said, yes, a group called MOSH, or an organisation called MOSH, which is worthy of consideration. So members of the board had meetings with the Lady Mayoress, Genevieve, and Jill Chapman, founder and CEO, who's with us today. So a decision was made to create a committee to explore ways and means whereby the Rotary Club of Adelaide could help MOSH. Here we are 12 months later, preparing to run a comedy night on the 18th. You haven't got that in your diary. With the proceeds going to help MOSH purchase a bus or something similar out there into the country. For me, personally, I'm particularly keen to support MOSH and see it expand its work. It's not probably well known to a lot of people here in this room, but back in January of this year, tragedy struck my own family when my 20-year-old nephew in Sydney took his own life. He was a very successful young adult who was admired by everyone he came in contact with. He was embarking on a promising career with Ernst Young. He was a tennis coach, loved by all those young kids he coached, as well as the mums and dads of those young kids. He was a leader and successful in every respect. Yet, for some reason, we'll never know, he felt that he could not go on. His decision has rocked everyone around him, his family, friends, work colleagues, and all those young kids that looked up to him. Our guest, Jill Chapman, has kindly agreed to come along and be part of today's meeting. First, Jill has an understanding of what my family is experiencing at this time. After experiencing her own family tragedy, Jill has set out to reach out to others in an attempt to prevent what is truly a national tragedy, which is all too common in this country. Please welcome Jill Chapman, founder and CEO of MOSH.
Thank you so much, Mr. Falconer. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for your attention today. What I'm going to talk about is not an easy topic to talk about, and it's certainly never funny. But I do have a very healthy sense of humour. It's one of the things that has got me this far over the last 17 years. So forgive me if now and then I might say something funny. In 2016, which are the most recent statistics that we have at hand, 2,866 people could live their own life no longer and took their lives in Australia. Now, there's roughly 100 people here in this room. That's 28 times, over 28 times that number. I don't have the statistics for South Australia, but it's probably around about 300. Would anyone like to hazard a guess as to the road toll the same year? Or even a percentage? Australia-wide, 1,293 people died on the road, but 2,866 died by suicide. If any of the topics that I talk about today press some buttons for you, please don't leave the room. We understand that it is an emotional topic, but we need to look after ourselves and each other. And if anyone would like to chat to me personally afterwards, please feel free. I'll be here for a little while, because I understand sometimes people have things they want to discuss but not necessarily ask as an open question. You can also get my contact details if you need to contact me later. I think the other very important thing to remember also is, I think often people look at youth suicide as one of the biggest risks in our statistics. You may be surprised to know that the highest age-specific rate is for men over 85. And the next highest age-specific rate is middle-aged men. Now, I don't want to bring the mood of the room down, because there is hope, but you need to be very aware that's where the danger lies. And for us women, who are often the ones caring for those blokes, mine's in the Royal Adelaide Hospital at the moment after having had a bit of a minor incident with a chainsaw, which could have been a lot worse than it was. We are the ones that have to look out for you guys quite often. Anyway, enough said about that. I'd love to talk to you about that later on. I have a question for you. Can you remember where you were after lunch on Wednesday, the 1st of August, 2001? There's a couple of us here that know exactly where we were. Where's Chris? Chris Egan and I were actually at lectures at Uni SA. And I came out of lectures to find 8 missed calls on my phone looking for me from my 16-year-old son Michael's high school. I spent the next hour or so standing at the bus stop on Frome Street waiting for the police to come and collect me. I had no idea why, but I knew it wasn't good. So my life and the life of many people around us was tipped on its head on that particular day. So after some months of shaking the dust out of my feathers and trying to work out who I was anymore and support my family, my eldest son John was 19 at the time, my mum and dad, because those of you who are grandparents that have lost a grandchild understand that you grieve twice. You grieve for the loss of your grandchild, but you also grieve for the loss of your son or daughter as well, for their loss. So anyway, spent a lot of time in the wilderness after that. But after some time realised that I couldn't just let this define the rest of my life. I needed to do something about it. So I spent a lot of time in the next few years supporting other people who had lost someone to suicide through the Bereaved Through Suicide support group as its facilitator, and also starting to network with other organisations around the place, both statewide and nationally as well. I came to the understanding very early that the word coined postvention, which still comes up in spell checker unfortunately, it refers to looking after those bereaved by suicide, and that is a very important part of suicide prevention in itself. So fast forward 7 years, and I'd spent quite some time looking for a place where people could go. Originally the idea was people could go who had lost someone to suicide, that would find someone there that they could talk to, they could relate to, they could do whatever they needed to without an appointment and for free. I found a fellow bereaved mum who shared my vision, and Sandy Lockwood and I incorporated MOSH on the 1st of August, obviously, 2008, in an old house in George Street in Theberton, and we're still there. 10 years later, self-funded, almost entirely up until the last 6 or 8 months, run by volunteers, including myself as the volunteer CEO. And great thanks to our patron Genevieve, who has done a lot towards introducing us to some very, very important new audiences. So what do we do at MOSH? Okay, MOSH is more than the house, but MOSH House is the centre of what we do. MOSH stands for Minimisation of Suicide Harm. So we work in prevention and bereavement support as well. So at the house at 86 George Street in Theberton, if you can find your way through the roadworks at the moment, is always someone there to listen. So 6 days a week, 10:30 to 4:30, there's always someone there to listen. It's free, there are no appointments, no judgments, and no one has to identify as being anything. A lot of people that come to the house are just lonely. There's nothing actually wrong with them, so to speak. So it's become more like a community house now. And Theberton is has a fairly older population, so most of the clients at Thebe are ladies over 50. When Genevieve first came and saw what we did, she said, "We've got to have this in the city." Anyone that's known Genevieve for any time knows that she's very difficult to say no to. So we found a space, or she found us a space, in the Southern Cross Arcade in the city, which has now become MOSH on Youth. So we also have an op shop there, because interestingly enough, the entrance to our organisation is through the op shop. There's no receptionist, there's no forms to fill out, there's no questions to be answered. You come in through the shop and are invited to either just buy something from the shop or take part in the activities that we have both at Theberton and in the city. The city is still very much a work in progress. If anyone's into vintage or retro fashions, that's where you go, in downstairs near Cheapest Chips. But there's also a drop-in and chill-out zone there as well. So if anyone who knows anyone who works or studies in the city, welcome to bring your lunch, do a bit of knitting, just chill out, whatever, grab a bargain in the city. We also have a bigger op shop on Port Road at Allenby Gardens, because by default our funding has been largely through our op shops, which also of course help to spread the message as well. Always looking for new volunteers, always looking for donations. We've just recently found a space. We are so very, very lucky with donations that we needed to get a spot for a central sorting facility. And a lot of these places they're all volunteer run, but often we also have placements through Work for the Dole, Centrelink, students that are studying, etc., etc. So there's a really great range of people that volunteer with us, and it's a very supportive environment to volunteer in. I do a lot of work in advocacy, in stigma reduction, by doing these talks, because it's not always something that people are particularly willing to listen to or talk about. I always say that you can't make it cute and you can't stick a red nose on what we do. So these opportunities are absolutely gold to be able to talk to people, but also give other people the opportunity to come to us and talk about what they need to. We also have training. I do various trainings from an hour through to 2 days, particularly around suicide bereavement, and also can put people in touch with some very, very good suicide prevention training programs as well. We love to do regional outreach. You would probably know that the suicide rate in the regional communities is much worse than it is in the city, and it's much, much worse in Aboriginal communities. I will say that that's not an area of expertise of mine, but I do love getting out into the regions. We were on the Darling River when my husband had his incident, so we do love to get out and about. And the best attended training is always in the regional areas. So hence moving into the project that Rob mentioned before, it actually has 2 parts to it. The first part is to link with other Rotary clubs in regional areas and actually offer them the bereavement training. So I've learned over the years to have an ulterior motive behind all this stuff, a bit like having the shops as the entrance to the organisation. By providing a training around how to help a grieving friend, you'll get people come from all areas of the community. But if I say this is about helping someone bereaved by suicide, you'll be lucky to get a quarter of the people turn up. So it is important that people do understand how to help a grieving friend. So I'm offering that to the regional Rotary clubs as a way of getting into those communities. And the other project that we have, which is really exciting and is where the money from the comedy night is going to, is to create, we call it lovingly mobile MOSH. Because what we do at MOSH is actually not rocket science. It's simple, but it's not easy. Because what we do is listen. We create opportunities for people to have a conversation. And that might be about what's troubling them, but it might just be about popping in and talking about the football or the weather, because it's about connection. Connections and conversations are incredibly important. And in this world where we think we're all connected, in actual fact, what it's doing is pushing each other aside and not having those face-to-face connections. So the idea of mobile MOSH is to get a caravan, strip it, and refurbish the inside of it so that it becomes almost like a pop-up MOSH House. So we can take it out to the regions, or we can go to events, we can go to the show, we can go to the Fringe, anything. I'll go to the opening of an envelope, as my husband likes to remind me, to spread the word. But there will be like an ulterior motive to get people to come in. So it might be a plant stall, it might be a craft activity, it might be an art activity, it might be a bookshop, it might be come and get your blood pressure checked, who knows, depending on the environment. But it's a way, it's a soft entry to the organisation. It's a non-clinical approach, and it takes away that stigma of come and talk to us if you're struggling. So we're really, really excited about that. I'm constantly looking on Marketplace and Gumtree and so forth for trashed caravans. I've got a couple in mind, actually. I've got another project simmering in the background for the second one. So how can you guys help? Guys, folks, everybody. First of all, please come to the comedy night. It will be an absolute hoot. I've been sitting here today catching up with all the amazing prizes, the donations. We've got a solar system, we've got a cruise. There's all sorts of amazing things that have been donated, and we're still looking for more. So please make sure you come along and enjoy the night with us and share some laughs, because it does get a bit tough at times. There's also the projects, of course. There's helping to actually build and design and orchestrate the actual physicality of what we need. We're going to need a vehicle to tow this thing around through the countryside. We were very, very fortunate this last year to win $20,000 from Impact 100 to actually buy a Ruckus, which is a Toyota vehicle that we have at the house, but we don't want to take that out to the country and take it away from the house. So we need a ute or something that we can pack everything else in. that my husband has very kindly, once he's recovered, agreed to be my chauffeur and my roadie along the way. There are always jobs within the organisation. As the organisation grows, we need more people. And I'm being really honest by saying we need more people of my vintage, because I'm not looking for work, I'm not studying, I haven't got all those pressures of young children and all the rest of it. We need those young people as well, of course, and they bring a great energy to the place. But we need retired and semi-retired folk for all sorts of things. There's admin, there's social media and promotions, we need a donor engagement officer, we need fundraising people. I need mentoring support. I'm really, really tired after 10 years. And what this incident with my husband, as much as he's okay, and it's a big toe and all, you know, it brought home to me how easily it could have gone very, very badly. And I would have been on my own, and MOSH would have floundered because too much of it sits here. So my idea now is I have to make myself redundant within the organisation so that I can spend more time with him, I can be on the road, and I can have a life outside MOSH. We need board members. We especially need a treasurer. We need more people to listen, and that's as simple and as hard as it is. We need shop staff. We need someone to do some maintenance and look after the garden for us. So there's all sorts of things, and these could be half a day a week, they could be a day a month. Trust me, the treasurer, the hardest job with the treasurer is keeping track of what I do when I probably didn't ask permission to do it, because I have a habit of asking for permission, asking for forgiveness rather than permission when it comes to things. So that's a very, very small potted history and a little nutshell of what we do. I would love to talk to you afterwards, but also, do we have a few minutes for some questions, Mr. Falconer?
We do. Because they all have their hands up very quickly.
Fantastic. Yeah, sorry, I'll let you do that bit. See, I'm such a boss. Sorry.
Then Chris, after Adriana.
Thank you, Jill. That's fantastic. I'd like you to elaborate a bit on, first of all, the collaboration with Belinda, Joe, and their team, and how do you see us going forward helping MOSH and the partnership between our two organisations? Okay.
Well, definitely, it very much is in its infancy, the partnership, but we're extremely grateful for the support that we've been getting already. So there's the two parts to the project. There's the liaising with the other organisations, the other Rotary clubs, to get out into the regions and start to spread the word, because we would love to see something like MOSH pop up everywhere. It doesn't have to look like what it looks like, and that's the idea of the van. It's about creating an opportunity for a conversation and a connection. So it could be in the local coffee shop, it could be a men's shed, it could be a spare office in the local, I don't know, stock and station agent or something. So it's about the concept and talking to people and saying, this is actually not hard. I don't want a fancy vehicle. At some stage there was some talk of getting hold of Jay Weatherall's, his promotion bus that he had for the, which, yes, would have been fantastic, but in actual way it's not what we want, because it doesn't have to be flashy and glitzy. It can be as simple as a few people sitting around a barbecue on a Sunday afternoon. So there's that part to the project. There's, of course, the fundraising, which is incredibly important, because apart from our everyday operational funding, which comes from our op shops, to have injections of funds from special events towards projects like this is honestly the only way we can do it. Just on that note, we have chosen not to go down the government funding line because it's not reliable. I've seen, and please don't take that as a criticism, it's just a reality. I've seen too many brilliant programs close because they relied on government funding for their everyday operational expenses. Did that answer both parts of your question? Going forward, okay. I guess on an individual level, I ran through all those volunteering opportunities. The opportunity to spread the word about what we do. There are people here who, of course, have got links in other clubs, in other organisations, to be able to spread the word about not only what we do, but how we can look after each other as a community, for sure.
Thank you, and thank you very much for a wonderful address. The work you're doing is fantastic.
Thank you.
I'm prompted to ask you about your collaboration or whatever with other organisations. There are a number of them, of course, some of them quite high profile. Beyond Blue comes to mind.
Yeah.
Do you have any collaboration? I understand that you're different, but do you have any collaboration or association with any of those?
We certainly do. Thank you for that. I am a member of some of the community-based suicide prevention networks, which were started out in Sydney by the Wesley Mission, but also now by SA Health. Great organisations like Beyond Blue, etc., and Are You OK Day. We make use of their resources because they're resource-rich, those places, and they're readily available to share them. We're in constant contact via meetings, etc., with other organisations to spread the word about what we do, but also to be able to sometimes plug the gaps with what they do, because we don't have any prescriptive, this is the area that we have to work with. So you spend a lot of time liaising with other organisations, for sure.
I think we'll need to wind up there. It's only a couple of minutes to go. Thank you very much, Jill, for coming along and sharing your journey with us. Oh, no, sorry, we're out of time.
But I will stick around.
Yeah, you can, yeah. Yeah, thanks very much indeed. Obviously, we'll be seeing a lot more of you over the next year.
Yes, I am becoming a member.
Becoming a member,
yes.
That's right. And also, so we thank you for your time. We'd also like to thank Genevieve for starting us on this road to where we are today. And thanks for your support. It's invaluable. Thank you very much. Okay, you can go. You can accept this on behalf of, we're presenting this on behalf of the club. Wonderful pen which is multitask.
Oh, it has a light in it.
A light in it as well. So thank you very much indeed for coming along.